How do you innovate from within? Learn all about it from Ryan Gorman with NRT, Susan Daimler with Zillow, and Heather Ostrom with Coldwell Banker.
All right. Innovate or die. Oh my. That's it's a rough to start, right? Well, thank you very much for being here today, and we're excited to hear about your perspective. We've talked a lot about innovation, and that last panel actually brought up a slightly different word, which is relevancy. And maybe that's a good place to start. You know, as you look at your businesses and what you're doing and how you're seeking to grow them, how do you think about and then execute upon staying relevant? And Ryan, we'll start with you.
Sure, that's a great question. Great place to start. Howdy, folks. I think you
brought a fan club.
All right, we've got a lot of our agents in the crowd.
Okay,
I see a lot of our future agents in the crowd too.
So. Nice.
Welcoming you aboard. I think innovation is relevant to absolutely everyone. It's incredibly germane today. So I like to think of innovation as, if you have ambition without innovation, then you have discounting, right? There's not really another place to go. So I think it's relevant to absolutely everyone. I think we'll talk about some things, hopefully, on the panel today that are not just some of the stories from us, but maybe some of the stories that are able to be implemented by everyone else in the crowd. So we obviously, with Realogy, with NRT, we have unbelievable scale, and we have hundreds and thousands of support staff supporting tens of thousands of agents doing hundreds of thousands of transactions. That can feel unrelatable maybe to someone who's an individual agent trying to innovate in their own business. It's really not. We're doing just on a different scale things that can be done locally, so we'll probably get into a little bit of that. But for us, we're reinventing everything we do from scratch, which starts with challenging your own assumptions about everything. So think of the constraints within which you work and then challenge them relatively methodically. So you want to grow your business? Great. What do you mean by that? Be specific and then challenge each individual assumption. Growing your business could mean growing laterally to more regions. It could mean growing a team. It could mean growing your sales price. It could mean growing your commission, which maybe sounds ludicrous, but that's the kind of challenge that you should have. You shouldn't work within the 6% constraint. We talked about iBuyers here earlier, which is another form of innovation. iBuyers are charging anywhere from maybe 10, 11, 13, 16% of the transaction, which to any agent out there means that there's something for which consumers, some segment, are willing to pay handsomely to get in return, maybe a more convenient experience, a more pleasant or delightful experience. And so that's the kind of thing to focus on to really develop your innovation roadmap.
There's a lot of places you can innovate. Do you find with NRT as a larger organization, do you think, is that harder? Do you sometimes look at some of the smaller shops and be like, man, it'd be nice if I could just pick up the phone and a new initiative is carried out versus going through all these different layers that will occur in a larger organization?
Yeah, actually, that's exactly how it works at NRT. I just pick up the phone and
it just happens.
It's phenomenal. Yeah. No, we're a large organization, obviously, so we have a lot to do, but we're trying to move with much, much greater speed than we ever have before. And really that comes down to, one, doing a lot less that doesn't matter. So there's a ton of how we all spend our days that just don't give us leverage. Ryan Schneider was on stage earlier, likes to talk about leverage. Most of what we do doesn't give us leverage. Most of what we do doesn't move the needle.
As an example, what would you say?
So we had, a year ago, 111 agent-facing marketing tools, which is impressive and impossible. That's ludicrous, obviously. But someone would come in and say, like, I saw something great at Inman Connect. I think we should use this thing. And we'd say, that's terrific. Let's go ahead and get that for you.
112.
Exactly. And it led to just a bewildering experience. So we've eliminated, just in the last year, 88 of those tools. I'm not sure most of our people even noticed because a lot of it wasn't even being utilized, right? So you start by clearing the decks and really focusing on what really matters the most, and then you can move with a great speed and agility. And honestly, like, we're big, which maybe it can be a little tough to get moving, but once you have that scale and you're moving, it's pretty unstoppable. But still, small folks can move even faster sometimes, and they should leverage that.
So Susan, what is mattering the most right now as you look at your firm and what's happening right now with you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's it's this idea of innovation, and it's keep moving forward, right? I think it's the momentum, we cannot be frozen, we cannot stand still.
How do you do that? Like, I agree, but what does that look like on a day-to-day?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're quite fortunate, and it's one of the reasons I'm at Zillow and I've been there for an extended amount of time, is I think we're fortunate that we have this culture of innovation. that is the expectation, right? And when we're not innovating, it's like, what is happening? Why are we not innovating? And it's who we are, it's what our employees expect, it's what management expects, and therefore also there is a lot of fluidity and excitement, but then also willingness to, to jump off the cliff and, to really do it forward. And it's great, and it's a privilege, to work in an environment like that. And so for us, it's always thinking, okay, what do we know is definitely next? Often it's what do we think is going to be next? And that's scary, right? I think a lot of people operate in the today and in the tomorrow, and we are trying to operate in 3 years.
And how do you keep that gap manageable, right? So you're thinking 3 years out.
Yeah.
Most practitioners, broker owners, agents in their business are not necessarily thinking about strategic initiatives in 2023, right? They're trying to get things done now. So, and yet you've got to interact with those folks. So how do you keep that gap relatable?
Yeah, it's difficult. And I think one of the, agents, brokerages, it's difficult. Things are shifting, and I think we've been saying this for a long time, but I do feel, having been in real estate over a decade, they're starting to shift faster, right? I think that is happening, is the ground is moving at a little bit of a quicker pace, and I think our pitch and our pledge is we understand that and come along with us. Like there's a little bit of trust us, right? Like we're jumping off the cliff and come with, and we're going to get bloody when we go through that door, and you're going to be right behind us, and that's going to be a good place to be in a few years.
Do you feel that Zillow at times has gotten too far ahead of that curve and lost momentum as a result?
I think that has to be some collateral damage from being innovative, right? I think that's just part of it. And that I think is back to the culture and the willingness to fail, and the willingness of like, okay, this didn't go great, this didn't go the way we thought, this didn't go in the direction we thought, we took a gamble, we put a lot of stuff in, okay, let's take stock, let's reflect, let's come back, and let's go down the next path. And there's an acceptance for that, and again, it's a privilege, but also, there's a lot of also smart people who are like, I cannot fail, and it's like, you better fail. Yep. Like if you don't fail, like you're not.
You embed that into the thinking of the organization.
To me, if you're not failing, you're probably standing a little bit still.
That's how you find the line too, right? If you're not failing, you're not finding the line in the first place. You're being way too safe, which Heather, you probably found a few lines.
It's like if you do not allow people to fail, you're going to stunt creativity, and that's how we develop new items.
I like that thinking. That's interesting.
It's like the minute you make people fearful of speaking up and risking a failure, you're not going to innovate. So, and
failure is where the innovation is, perhaps.
Yeah, and it's like it means you've stopped asking questions, and you're complacent, and you're going to fail at one point. You may be okay right now, but a few years down the road, you're setting yourself up for trouble because you are not interacting with your target audience.
Yes, and someone else will leapfrog you. I mean, that's the other thing too, right? Is if you don't have that view, you're not willing to take those risks, someone else is, right? And you will find yourself in a place where, whoa, we stopped because we were fearful, we were unsure, but they kept running, and now we have to catch up and be innovative, and that's actually even harder.
So applicable down to the agent level. I mean, to you're or up to the agent level. Heather, you've been fearless. Anyone who's not a friend of Heather on Facebook,
I'm trying to be good. I'm trying.
You should be. It will add joy to your life to follow Heather on social media. But you've been trailblazing in a lot of those things over time. I think it's a really great example how individually we can do exactly what Susan was mentioning.
But it is scary as an agent to speak up when you see something not functioning right, and to have a support management that is going to support and actually listen. What is your problems? How can we correct this? And what can we do to improve it? And when you don't have that dialogue, agents are going to leave.
So tell me from your perspective, Heather, what's actually working? So we're talking a lot about failure, and that's good, but what's actually working when it comes to right now where we are in marketing and some of the areas that you're really an expert in? What's your view on that?
My background's in graphic design, so and even I've fallen behind because once you start getting busier, the first thing that you let go is innovation. And so it's like I have to make a conscious effort to go back to my list. Where can I correct? Have I stopped asking questions like before? And I just tried to go back to the, it's like my hub is marketing and graphic design. I should know better, but it's like you do get caught up when you get busy. So what's been nice is having support systems to help, so it makes a frictionless environment.
Give us an example of that. What do you mean by that?
You know what, we have an in-marketing in-house person that's almost a supplemental support for me when I can't get flyers done, or you're having that support staff to increase your likelihood of success. So it's just having that support staff around you, just doing the little things that a daily agent has to do, to put this just listed sign up, put it sold. There's so many components that can just take up your time. And if you're not supported by the right people, and you don't, like most people are salespeople, and they're not marketing people, so it's like you got to work with your strengths and making sure that you have that support staff around you.
That's interesting. So maybe one of your strengths is not innovation. Maybe one of your strengths is, you need to be out doing the work, though who are you partnering with that is taking that
I have
time
a good partner.
You do.
He's a cutie. He's a happy little Swede. But, it's like that's what we did. I said, you know what? Your stuff's ugly. I'm going to start working with you, because I had my own graphic design company, and recognizing you are the best closer and you're a great salesperson. People love you. I'm really good at making things look pretty and making continuity through all the design. So it's like, it's awesome to be able to see your strengths and work toward it and stay in your lane. And then also having the support staff to make sure everything else falls into place.
Yeah. So it's almost like you need space in the room to have the creativity around innovation. And yet the reality is our businesses are also very busy. So I'm curious, we'll start with you. How do you do both? I mean, there's a lot that Zillow needs to execute on, and there's a lot that Zillow needs to make room to create. A bunch of which may not work at all. How do you resource that? How do you think about creating the team around all that?
Yeah, I mean, piggybacking on what Ryan said, a lot of it is focus, and that's a place where we're spending time thinking, even down to the minutia of like, is this meeting important, right? Like, what are we talking about here?
Micro focus of everybody's time?
Yes, like a focus of everybody's time, because that's what gets lost, and there are only so many hours in the day.
And that helps with the creative people.
Yeah,
keep us on task.
Yeah, and you need...
Trying to keep them on task, that's another topic.
And
right?
back to this idea of space, right? You need the space to think, to innovate, to just get out of your own way and out of the day-to-day. It's really easy to come to, and I try and do it in week blocks. Like I'll come out of a week and say, how much time did I actually spend like questioning and thinking this week? Not enough.
Right.
So next week, I gotta up that, and then maybe some other things fall on the floor to do that. But I think the space that people are listened to, right? Like that ideas and people can share and feel comfortable raising their hand and maybe challenging an assumption that has been a staple or a foundation for years. Like we need that, and we need those people to feel free to speak up and say, hey, when's the last time we gut checked this assumption? Like that was back then. Is that still true?
Totally.
Is that still right? Do we need to keep down this path? And then it's that also the support system of, okay, we can pump the brakes and we can make really hard decisions that maybe are gonna, even ruffle internal feathers, right? Like it's pretty hard to shut down projects that people love and have been working on and believe in, and to say, you know what, that's just not,
You have recent examples of that?
all the time. I mean, all the time. Like, it's true. And
Sure.
it's really, really difficult, but there has to be an appreciation, again, for that privilege of we can pump the brakes and we can level up and we can say, okay, this isn't the right thing for right now.
Sure.
And have good rationale and move forward. And I think also the important part is that people kind of link arms, and even the people who, have to, lick their wounds for a bit or whatever it is.
Their precious egos.
Yeah, and it's not even
Sure.
egos, but it's like this is time and energy and resources, but then they're along. They're like, yes, I'm in, I get it, and we are full steam ahead. I think I'll say one that's like is that you see this innovation sometimes get slowed down by the naysayers, and there's still the people who are like, oh, is this the right thing, or are we really doing this? And you got to just link arms and go with the
You gotta
decision.
go.
So what do I do with that, Heather? So if I'm a practitioner, I get it at one level if I've got a large company or organization and I'm managing projects and initiatives and trying to coalesce resources into working groups and et cetera. But if I'm a practitioner, maybe a small broker owner or an agent on the street, what do I do with all of this that we're talking about on a day-to-day, this topic of innovation? Do I ignore it? Do I just hope that somebody else is doing it for me, or can I participate in some way as a practitioner?
Like from a broker manager level?
Broker manager and from an agent level,
Okay.
what would be your perspective?
Well, I mean, just keeping your dialogue with your producing agents. I mean, and maybe even the ones that maybe aren't, like, and also creating an environment where the experienced agents are helping the younger agents because they can feed off one on each other, so it's a symbiotic relationship. Because I do think that's one of the best things that's been happening in our office in the last year. I've noticed that we had this really great group of young agents coming in. They're creating their own self-help groups, and they're having some of the more experienced agents come in and give them their best tips. And by having that dialogue with them, everybody's learning. And so it keeps you kind of fresh. So you're empowering the young
communication
agents.
channels?
Yeah, and I just think just encouraging sharing within the office, because if you can't get the listing, I sure as heck want my office teammates to get the listing.
You know, that's interesting. I mean, we're talking about innovation in some ways at a macro. The reality is there's often innovative situations about how to get a deal done that occurs in the office itself, that if you're not in communication, then you may miss. That's innovation too.
I mean,
right?
but you'll get into when you treat things positively and without fear, because if you know what you're great at, you shouldn't be in fear. And by that, people are attracted that you can get in-town referrals for people that may think that you're a better resource, and we've had that happen. So it's like there's so many layers of like, don't be afraid of your competition. Learn from them, you know, ask questions.
I think that individual, like bring it down to just individual level for every human, but you know, for every agent in the audience, that's where we're especially, you know, all of us are especially interested in making sure that we're helping. Like, I would suggest just look at your calendar. Just look at your calendar over the, before you look at your calendar, write down what you think are the most important things you can possibly do, and then look at your calendar for the last 3 weeks. And watch with amazement the incredible mismatch that you have for how you're allocating your time and what you thought were the most important things you were doing. And if it's not true for you, like, contact me. You can find me on every system known to man. I would love to meet you. You are the unicorn who is not actually misallocating their time. But for most people, we are not allocating our time. And that's why I think stopping, as Susan mentioned, stopping is one of the most hardest but most important things you can possibly do to really move forward, stopping the things that are not important. But I think, you know, if I want everyone to come out of here with one thing, it's that innovation is accessible to you. You know, I use that accessible innovation metaphor oftentimes. Metaphor, analogy, I'm honestly not sure. But you know that little table that's on top of the pizza that keeps the box from getting smashed on it? The thing that costs like a penny? Like, that's an amazing innovation that saved millions of dinners across the country, right? But that's innovation. That little thing is innovation. Ryan Serhant yesterday was talking about just time blocking in an interesting way. That's innovation, right? That's innovation that moved his business forward more than anything else that he did.
That's interesting. It wasn't that time blocking was an innovative concept, because it had been around for a while, but for him, at that moment, it clicked in just such a way it was innovative for his business.
And you know what? Do not break your appointments for yourself and self-improvement. I think that was one another big things. Like, if you have a video segment, make sure it's an appointment that you are not going to break. Keep the commitment, make it happen, and don't overthink it.
Right. And partner with people who, I'm sorry.
Go on.
Partner with people who can help you to do that, right? So all of you have partners, whether you know it or not. You have vendors, service providers, partners, referral partners, or maybe your broker owner or your technology partner, your leads partner. Like, make sure you have the right partners to allow you to be able to do that. Like, a lot of what we're focusing on right now with our concierge suite of products is all about lifting from the agent's plate a lot of the things that are not adding value to their world. Make sure all of your partners are doing that. Challenge everyone. The people who got you here as a partner might not get you there unless they too are thinking about how they can innovate, save you time, save you money, be able to support you better. So across the platform, every vendor, every partner that you utilize, make sure they're in it with you. They're collaborating on this sort of innovation journey.
Susan, you have a comment?
Oh yeah, I was gonna say too, the other thing, like the time is important, and also that feeling in your stomach. Like, people I work with, often, like in our one-on-ones, I'll say like how uncomfortable are you right now, right? And there has to be a level of uncomfortable. If you're not uncomfortable, you are not doing probably what you need to do to move forward. And when we get comfortable in our jobs or our roles, like, that's the time either to change your job or your role, like in it, or go for a new one, right? And I think that feeling innovation, I was joking about the title, Innovate or Die, is like sometimes innovating feels a bit like dying, right? Because it's fear, it's panic, it's like that pit in your stomach when you make those difficult decisions or you jump off the cliff. But you won't get anywhere, I don't think, if you don't do those, or if you also don't hitch yourself to partners who are doing those and you're along for the ride. That's a very also acceptable path to innovation.
Sounds like a word substitution, innovation and growth. Right? It sounds
and
like
relevance
really,
and relevancy.
And relevancy.
I mean, it's all the same.
I couldn't agree. Growth oftentimes doesn't feel great in the moment, but it feels great in retrospect.
It does.
So you've got to get comfortable being uncomfortable if you
Yeah.
really want to get to the promised land.
Well, I think that's a perfect place for us to end it. Thank you guys. Wonderful jobs. And we could spend an hour with you, so thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you.